Hey, how you doing? 'Tis I. I'm sorry we don't have an intro yet. It's gonna take a while to get all that together, and I just wanna say, good morning. Um, I'm sorry about the dog, if you hear the dog barking, but, he's gonna be here throughout the show because obviously no one's coming to walk him, which is usually the case. Um I'm snowed in like I suspect most of you, and, I am so I mean, I'm so exhausted and sad. I don't I I don't know where to start. And I'm not alone. I mean, I know I'm not alone. I, uh I was reminded of a quote from, C.S. Lewis, and I might get it slightly wrong, but I sat with my anger long enough until it told me its real name was grief. And so I think if, like me, you're feeling this admixture of rage and inexplicable grief, um, it makes sense. They travel together. I don't know where to start. Obviously, the domestic terrorists who control our government now, are scrambling today because they see that things have not quite worked the way they intended. Their occupation, their invasion of Minneapolis was intended to terrorize not only the citizenry of that city, but the state and the nation. And the amazing people of Minneapolis threw a wrench into the works by their just astonishing, brave, brilliant resistance. I read a piece in the Atlantic that blew me away because it turns out that the people, the people that Kristi Noem and Greg Bovino and Donald Trump call domestic terrorists, they are obviously everyday citizens doing what Americans are free to do. And they have gone to training. There is an organization. It's just a guy who started it. In other words, there really is no organization. There's a building where you can go that has classes on how to protest. peacefully and defend yourself and what your rights are and how you can help your neighbors. And an astonishing number of Minneapolis citizens of all classes, races, ages, stripes have gone there, committed to taking the class. In fact, those people you see out in that sub-zero cold, are better trained than those terrorists called ICE. Better trained, more disciplined. Let me see if I can find just a little bit to share with you because it blew me away. Minneapolis and the people there, Minneapolis, St. Paul, all those people we've been watching, some of whom have now given their lives as true patriots, and their names will live in history, assuming we get to write that history by being the victors in what clearly is a civil war. You know, I'm reminded of how people sometimes would say to me years ago that I was hyperbolic, I was over the top, using terms like fascists. Not like I'm not in the habit of saying I told you so. I'm also seeing often that reporters who are going to Minneapolis, who have in the past covered wars, covered uprisings, covered revolutions, are saying that this looks like that. Now, when you start hearing from people who've gone overseas to cover civil wars in autocracies or massive rebellion against such, and they say, guys, this is what's happening here, I think you should believe them. Here is one such reporter, Robert Worth. And he is the one who was, he says at one time, he said, at times while I'm here, Minneapolis has reminded me of what I saw during the Arab Spring in 2011, and remember that. And what he saw in Cairo and in Tahrir Square. Where everyday citizens who weren't necessarily political have found themselves out in the streets. He said in his piece, I heard the same tones, and he's talking about what he saw in the Arab Spring. I heard the same tones of outrage from parents, from ministers, from school teachers, and elderly residents. And some of the things that divided Minneapolis people and leaders just a few weeks ago, whatever, politics, this, that, the other thing, have absolutely faded away as the people there have become unified in their opposition to this unconstitutional occupation of their city and the outright murder of their citizenry. So there's a building in South Minneapolis that is where people can go for training. They figure 65,000 people about have already received the training, almost all of those just in the last 2 months. And the reporter went to one of the trainings and was just blown away. They're trained on how to use their whistles. They're trained when to use their whistles. They're trained how to communicate with each other. He said, before I left, I watched the trainers put the group there that day through simulations, an unexpected ice raid on a neighbor's home, a planned demonstration at the airport where they might be trying to deport some people. And the reporter, in talking to the people who were there, said they did not seem like typical protest types. He said one of them, a driver's ed teacher, who asked me to identify himself only as Dave, said this: I don't like confrontation at all. And that's another reason that it's weird I'm here getting this training. He came with his 14-year-old daughter who was getting the training too. The reporter makes clear it's a nonprofit that provides the space and the training. There are no leaders to this movement. It's just people getting organized with each other. He drove with one guy who he said has a cell phone fixed above the windshield of his car. He said, and you could hear people tracking the location of ICE as it passed through neighborhoods. And they were doing it on a Signal audio chat. He said it was like being inside a police car. People just are showing up there. He said, I approached a man standing across the street from an elementary school. He had a blue whistle around his neck. He told me his name was Dan. And that he came every morning for an hour to make sure the kids got into school safely. While I was there, other local volunteers came by regularly. They brought Dan coffee, donuts. That's what they're doing there. People like you and me. And this guy who was standing there said, it's kind of like unorganized, organized. Somehow they're making it work. I find these people astonishing. And of course, the two martyrs thus far were part of this unorganized organization, just trying to do their part. There was one other thing that was in here that just blew me away. He said children were the moral fault line for many of the people I met. And not just the children of immigrants who are at risk of losing their parents or themselves being snatched up. He said he met an affluent suburban couple who were taking part in the training. And they were there because, well, I'll let the guy speak. When a child witnesses violence, it's profoundly different from adults. It leaves lasting scars. And this guy said, I am not political. He resisted that term. His wife said, no, we like to think of it as just being human. And then the reporter says their anger was unmistakable when they said that the Trump administration was violating basic Christian principles. And the suburban father said, it became clear very quickly that ICE is the Proud Boys. That is absolutely the case. ICE is the Proud Boys, the Boogaloo Boys. They've given them uniforms and are letting them run wild. One more just to humanize. I so feel for these people. And the thing is, it could be any city, any one of us. The only good news is that the extraordinary stupidity and incompetence and cruelty of this administration is getting in the way of what they intend. So this same reporter who has covered wars and is now covering ours said that he bumped into a 46-year-old documentarian whose God has a just classic Minnesota name. His name is Chad Knutson. And he relays this story. On the morning after Renee Good was killed, Chad Knutson was at home watching television with his two dogs. And he watched, and I remember this video, he watched as a protester laid a rose on a makeshift memorial that had been set up to her. And then an ICE agent took the rose and then mockingly gave it to a female ICE agent, and they both laughed. Chad Knutson told the reporter that when he saw those two ICE agents laughing, something broke inside of him. And he literally, he says this, I grab my keys, I grab my coat, and I drive right over there. I barely park my car, and I'm running out screaming and crying, you stole a fucking flower from a dead woman. Like, are you even human anymore? And as he relayed this story to the reporter said his voice was so thick with emotion that it felt almost as if he were telling a story of religious conversion. Again, it reminded me of Tahrir Square, when so many people seem to have reached a moral and political breaking point. So as we look for any silver linings, that is the one. Because you have to believe that people who weren't paying attention are starting to see this stuff, are starting to see with their own eyes, are starting to hear the just outrageous lies that the president and his people are telling them. And little by little, they're abandoning ship. You know, when I've found out that Alex Pretty Preddy graduated from Preble High School in Green Bay. And he grew up in the same place I grew up. It just, I don't know why. Why is it that when something gets a little closer to you like that, like I know that place, I know people who know him. How it just makes it more of a, somehow feels more personal. It hurts a little bit more. And so I was thinking of the people in Green Bay. Green Bay is a pretty conservative area. That Fox River Valley, it begot Senator Joe McCarthy. Came from Appleton. Those are conservative, blue-collar people, small town, rural. And I was thinking that a lot of those people who may have voted for these sons of bitches maybe knew Preddy, knew his family. And then when you see what a wonderful human being he was, literally a choir boy, a Boy Scout, an ICU nurse. Not a bad thing to be said about him, but that does not stop our government from telling us that he was a domestic terrorist brandishing a firearm intent on massacring, I'm using their words, law enforcement members. And they've said it was during a riot, which it wasn't. They said he was on a crime scene, which he wasn't. Every word they say is a fucking lie. And the president's response to this morning, he's got to be getting freaked. He's got to be pissed, as capable he is of any thought. But this, you see, could hurt him, so he's probably paying a little bit of attention. And so his response is to send Tom Homan in. My memory of Tom Homan is of somebody who we first really saw a lot of when they tried their first foray into Los Angeles, remember? And Homan telling reporters, hey, people are going to get hurt. Don't get in our way. So this is the guy he's sending in to clean things up. Unless it happened in the last 10 minutes, the only Democratic senator who has not issued a statement condemning what happened is John Fetterman. John fucking Fetterman. Although, hang on. Blue. See what control I have? You, good boy, just stop. But you know who did today? His wife, Giselle. And Giselle Fetterman put out this. For more than a decade, I lived undocumented in the United States. Every day carried the same uncertainty and fear lived in my body. A tight chest, shallow breaths, racing heart. What I thought was my private chronic dread has now become a shared national wound. This now daily violence is not law and order, Giselle Fetterman writes. It is terror inflicted on people who contribute, love, and build their lives here. It's devastatingly cruel and un-American. That's Senator Fetterman's wife. And that his wife was an undocumented. And he has not said anything. Oh, he did say, where do I have this? 3 days ago, he did put something out, which is mind-blowing. I'm not going to be able to find it. I'm not. Oh, I have a friend who said that if I go close, he said, your nose looks really big and it distorts your face. And I said, well, my nose is really big. Okay, as long as I got close, let me see. I haven't been looking at any of your stuff. By the way, I have John Fetterman's phone number here as she covers her big nose. Would you write this down? I'll give you a moment to get something to write with. John Fetterman's number. Call. You won't get a human. You won't get shit, but those calls get logged, and you just effing tell him what you think. And what you think is that he should resign immediately. He's not doing the job. He is not representing us. He's collecting a hell of a nice paycheck and health insurance, which God knows he needs. His phone number is 202-224-4254. No, I could give you your other McCormick's, but that is a wasted call. This would not be. Perhaps. Fetterman, 202-224-4254. Okay, guys, let me see what you guys are saying. Over at the local blowhard radio station last week, one of the talk show hosts was criticizing the training that was available locally. Oh, there was a incredibly well-attended session over here in East Liberty. Hundreds of people showed up. And it was for people to know their rights, to know what you could do to help protect people against ICE and against violence. And it's the most American thing possible. Okay, I don't know. Yeah. Fucking Fetterman. I'm sorry I ever voted for him. I want my money back. You know, I have been told that if you gave him money, I did not. If you gave him money, that they are refunding it. I find that hard to believe, but whatever. And you know, I haven't even started on Trump and the others, Bovino and Noam and all the rest, saying, well, here's Trump's word. I did write them down. This is about Preddy. He had a gun. Only criminals carry guns on our streets. Whoa. And there again, the NRA is freaking out. Their Second Amendment base is freaking out. These guys are showing themselves to be exactly what we know. Rights, American rights, the right to speech, the right to keep and bear arms, the right not to be seized and searched or have your home invaded. Those rights apply only to people who vote for Donald Trump. The rest are considered domestic terrorists and have no rights. You know what this is, guys? Let's start calling things what they are, okay? What you are witnessing in Minneapolis is state terror. State meaning the government. Terror. It is the major tool of fascists and dictators to sow fear. And as I said, I think at the beginning, it's backfiring on them. People aren't, plenty of people are getting afraid. I mean, the fearful, you know who they are. They're the ones who shut up and who fall in line. They're the college presidents. They're the corporate leaders. They're the Republican senators and congressmen and governors, etc. But the idea is to instill fear. The stated purpose of any of this, what was the stated, why are they there in Minneapolis? Tell me, why are they there? It has something to do with fraud about some child care money, and Somali immigrants were part of this fraud. And so you dispatch troops? No, it's they grab onto any excuse. You know when they were bombing the boats, killing people in boats and saying that they were dealing, they were killing Americans. They were the enemy because they were bringing drugs to the U.S. Who knows? They were blowing boats out of the water. Remember that? It's the same thing because it turns out that had nothing to do with it. Drugs. They tell a story so that they can position themselves. And then when they do what they intended to do all along, they're absolutely no problem with the immediate pivot. They invade Venezuela. They snatch the president. They leave his entire apparatus of terror and repression in place. Because it had nothing to do, freedom for the Venezuelans, liberty, drugs, had nothing to do with any of that. It was all about the fucking oil. And this has nothing to do with federal funds or state monies not being used properly or being used fraudulently. It has to do with ginning up racism, anti-immigrant stuff, and getting control of personal information of Minnesotans who have failed now 3 times because they didn't vote for Donald Trump. Noam, in her, her genius gamesmanship, just flat out said to Governor Walz this weekend, hey, you want us out? Okay. Give us your voting records. Give us the information on all of your citizens, and we'll leave. You'll leave without taking care of the fraud and those Somalis? No, they have bungled this big time because they're fucking idiots. And they are so soulless, so power mad, so hungry to instill fear for their own power. And for Trump, also, money, 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 money. You know how I mentioned that Minnesotans are now like united. They didn't agree on this, that, the other thing, doesn't matter. United now. That was not the intent of these idiots, to unite the opposition. George Will, as conservative a conservative as you can get, and understand Donald Trump and all of these people, this administration is not conservative. That's not what they are. They absconded with what used to be the Republican Party, which used to be, a bastion of conservatism, represented by George Will or William Buckley. Conservatives. These guys, none of that. George Will, a conservative, here's how you know everything's changed. George Will is on the same side as you and me. Yeah. George Will, in his latest column, said about the Trump administration that it was a sickening moral slum. Okay. I don't disagree. Remember that god-awful couple in suburban St. Louis about 4 or 5 years ago? And I think it was after George Floyd's killing, and there were Black Lives Matter marches. And one such march, peaceful march, went by their house. And they stood on their front lawn. The husband had like one of those, like machine gun looking things. And she had, a gun of some sort. And they literally brandished them at peaceful protesters and threatened them. Or remember Kyle Rittenhouse? Remember, Blue, hey. Remember Kyle Rittenhouse? Yeah. He went, right, to a protest. He gunned people down. And he is now, he's a hero. He brought a gun. He shot it. He killed people. He's a hero to these fucking sons of bitches. And that Missouri couple, they were rewarded by they ended up giving a keynote address at the Republican convention. Blue. You can't make it up. I'm sorry. Can't make it up. You know, they fucked up when the Wall Street Journal editorial board says they fucked up. And they did. Editorial, Wall Street Journal. The administration's spin on this simply isn't believable. Ms. Noem and Mr. Miller aren't credible. Their social media and cable TV strategy is to own the libs rather than to persuade Americans. Persuade the Americans of what? That they want to live in a police state? That they want to be terrorized by their own government, a government that kidnaps children and flat out executes wonderful citizens in the streets? What was Preddy's crime? Coming to the aid of a woman. The Wall Street Journal warns, uh-oh, this is becoming a political liability for Republicans. Americans don't want law enforcement shooting people in the street or arresting 5-year-old boys. Yeah, it just doesn't look good. It doesn't look good. You know, there's so many thoughts in my head. I know that a lot of the fact, I mean, Minnesota is about as white a state as you can have. And the fact that it's white people getting shot in the head, shot in the back. It's freaked white folks out. Black Americans, not so much. This is the kind of terror that Black Americans have lived throughout their history. And I saw a quote I'm not sure who it's from, so I'm sorry, but I found it. There is no shade of white that will save you from this murderous regime. No. So in some ways, if Trump wanted to radicalize Americans, I mean, I know what they want is to sow mistrust, distrust of government, and well, you know what? I just can't. I can't. Where did I, Blue? That nice person is shoveling for us. He's not attacking us. Blue, it's okay. I'm telling you, it's okay. He doesn't, not so sure I'm reading the situation right. Blue, stop it. And now my train of thought's all fucked up here. Okay, I'm just going to share a few quickies with you. There's just so much I can't, ping, 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 ping. I'm just all over the place. David Brooks. Just sharing stuff. People, unlike me, who's just babbling off the top of my head, when I start reading other people's words to you, it's because they had time to find the right word to put together a cogent message. And then, they end up speaking for sometimes us or provoking us to think for ourselves, ideally. But Brooks said, and you can agree or disagree with him. I don't like this sort of numbering crap he does, but he says we are in the middle of at least 4 unravelings. One, the unraveling of the post-war international order. Yeah, check. Done by Trump alone. Let's see. The unraveling of the democratic order and rule of law. Yeah, check, Trump. The unraveling of domestic tranquility. Oh, man. And finally, the unraveling of President Donald Trump's mind. And then Brooks goes on to say that what concerns him most is Trump's unraveling mind, because narcissists often get worse with age. Their remaining inhibitions fall away. And we're seeing that, perhaps. Things only get more so, right? So Trump's grandiosity, he says, his entitlement, his cruelty, his lack of empathy, his ferocious overreaction to any perceived slight, all of these things are getting ratcheted up. He has been quicker and quicker, Brooks points out, to resort to violence. And I don't know where he got the tally, but he said this guy who so openly covets the Nobel Peace Prize has signed off on this year, 2025, has signed off on 622 bombing missions overseas. He has killed people in places ranging from Venezuela to Iran, Nigeria, and Somalia, on and on and on, not to mention Minneapolis. And then he quotes some ancient historians, because as I've said a lot recently, humans have not changed. We humans are the same as we were 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 years ago. And he tells us that the Roman historian Tacitus was especially good at describing the effect that a tyrant has on the people around him. That when the tyrant first takes power, there is a rush of people into servitude. The sycophants, the ass kissers, the suck-ups. And the flattery must forever escalate. Do you remember the first time you saw one of those televised Trump cabinet meetings? And you thought, what the fuck? Where they went around the table and every cabinet secretary was vying to flatter him the most. This is classic. I mean, Tacitus saw, Caligula, Nero. It's the same shit. So the flattery must escalate. It must grow more and more fawning until every person's dignity is stripped away. Take a look at the Republicans in Congress. And then comes the disappearance of the good. As morally healthy people lie low just to survive. And Tacitus also says is that when we're beyond all those stages. We've lived them now. And the whole society tends to be anesthetized. The relentless flow, remember Bannon calling it flooding the system? The relentless flow of appalling events just overloads the nervous system. The rising tide of brutality, which once seemed shocking, becomes unremarkable. We are living that now. Minneapolis has awakened, roused many from their anesthesia. I quoted this guy last week at one point, Robert Kagan. I looked him up, and he was a neocon. I mean, he was into that Iraq war and all that stuff. Again, people who we were totally in opposition with now are on our side in this fight. They don't want state terror. They don't want our government killing us. And Kagan wrote this. Remember, conservative. Americans are entering the most dangerous world they have known since World War II. One that will make the Cold War look like child's play. And the post-Cold War look like a paradise. Well, you recall a rather famous classical work called Paradise Lost by John Milton. That is what we are. We must prevent. I'm not going to live to see it because this will take decades and decades to repair if it can be. Here's another person who's Lydia Poldring. She's covered wars. She went to Minneapolis and she just says what it is. Minnesota is under siege. This is definitely not an immigration enforcement operation. Yeah. It is an occupation designed to punish and terrorize anyone who dares defy this government. And by extension, defy Trump's power to wield limitless force against any enemy, including the American people, that he wishes. This tough war correspondent ended her piece by quoting a 17-year-old high school junior who she met in Minneapolis on when his class walked out in protest, walked out of school. And she was moved by what he said to her. This is a 17-year-old. ICE might not break into my house and try to take one of my family members because we're all white. But I'm not going to not care just because it's not going to happen to me. That's irresponsible. That's disrespectful. And honestly, it's sinful. Yeah. I don't know, guys. It's going to be a tough fight. Don't look at my nose. Will we ever get back to the Epstein files? Wow. What the F is in those files? I mean, eventually, yeah. I mean, can you imagine what's in there? That all of this, probably the timing is to prevent this. The fact is, what? They've even admitted they've only released 1%. 1%. They're under court order. They're under congressional order. And nothing happens. What does the law mean if they can just flout it? What does it mean? I'm infuriated by hearing Pretty's and Good's death framed as poor personal choices. They should have stayed home. Yeah, they should have obeyed. They shouldn't have interfered. Do the fucks who say those things, do they know anything about the goddamn revolution that created this country? Those first Americans who said, I'm not staying home. I'm not obeying your friggin' orders. I'm a free person. I am doing nothing wrong. Nothing. What are we supposed to do? Obey their orders up until they load us into the cattle cars? You fucks. I cannot tell you how much I despise your unbelievable ignorance, your soullessness, your sinfulness, your total lack of any humanity, your gullibility, your bitterness, and your hate. All right, we're out of time. You can take that literally or metaphorically. It works both ways. Thanks for being here, guys. I do appreciate it. Stay warm. Dig out. And fight the good fight, huh? Be a Minnesotan. Be a Minnesotan.